Welcome everyone here on Facebook. We are live from UN headquarters in New York. I am Helene Dawn Rosengren with the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and I'm here today with Dawn Holland, who's part of the Global Economic Monitoring Unit here in UN DESA's Development Policy and Analysis Division. Great to have you with us, Dawn.
Thanks very much.
This week, your team shared the latest updates for the world economy. And we thought that this would be a good opportunity to share some of the main findings with our Facebook audience. So if you're tuning in and watching this broadcast, please share any questions that you have on the global economy with Dawn in the comments field, and we will do our best to respond either in this broadcast or in the comments field afterwards. So we have in our Facebook audience people from all across the globe. What does the latest forecast for the world economy mean for people living in different parts of the world?
Well, what is clear is that we have started to see some increase in global growth over the last 6 months. So in broad terms, things this year are looking a little bit better than they did last year when both global production and world trade slowed to a very low rate. That said, in our report we do raise some concerns that in several regions around the world, growth still remains too low for the rapid progress that we want to see towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So, for example, in some of the regions around the world, we've actually increased our projections for growth in some of the large developed economies, including the United States and Japan. There's also a firmer outlook for some of the economies in transition, so the Russian Federation and several of its key trading partners in the Commonwealth of Independent States. In East Asia and South Asia, they remain the world's most dynamic region. So we're seeing quite strong growth there, supported by domestic demand and government policy. However, in South America, the recovery has been slower than we'd hoped for and expected. We saw deep recessions last year in Argentina, in Brazil, and in Venezuela. Another concern that we raise in the report is that we've actually revised down our forecast for some of the world's poorest countries, so some of our least developed countries around the world. Prospects are now a little bit worse than we had expected them to be 6 months ago.
Were there any findings when you and your team prepared the report? Were there any findings that surprised you in the preparation?
Well, I think one of the most striking things that is presented in the report is an illustration of average incomes in different regions around the world. We actually saw in several regions, so in Central, in Southern, in West Africa, and also in South America, average income, so that's GDP per capita, actually declined last year. So, and we're not expecting to see very rapid growth in incomes, average incomes there for the next 2 years. So what that means is the implications are that last year we actually, rather than making progress towards raising average living standards, we actually took a step back, and we're not expecting to see any rapid improvement over the next couple of years there.
But you also make some recommendations in the report. Are there any recommendations for nations across the globe that you give in terms of making a difference?
So one of the things that we highlight is that we've had a long period of relatively weak growth in the global economy over the last nearly 10 years now since the global financial crisis. And one of the things that's holding back a stronger recovery is the low rate of investment. And that, in turn, is holding back productivity growth, which is what we need to see in order to revive the global economy. So Stimulating investment through government support, through incentives to firms, is an area that we strongly support to move us towards our goals of stronger growth.
And you look at all the different regions in the world when you prepare the report. For example, looking at a family in East Asia, the coming 2 years, what can they expect looking at their local economy in that region?
Well, like I said, East Asia is one of the fastest growing regions of the world and has been so for many years now. We're expecting stable, relatively strong growth there. Unemployment is relatively low. Inflation is relatively stable. So that means that incomes are rising. So for the average family, we should be expecting an improvement relative to where we were last year. The other factor I would highlight in East Asia is that there are, in several countries, governments are initiating some major infrastructure projects which will help to support the strong growth in that region over the medium term as well.
If you look at some of you have mentioned a couple of challenges for the global economy. If there are any additional ones that you can highlight that you haven't mentioned, and also hopes. What can we hope for, in the coming years? Are there any light that we can look forward to?
So in terms of challenges, one of the challenges that we see is something that we hope can be addressed in the short term rather than waiting for the longer term. The longer term prospects for our sustainable development goals, so eradicating poverty in particularly, is one of the issues that we highlight in the report. Our goal that all the member states have signed up to is to eradicate extreme poverty everywhere in all its forms by 2030. Our concern is that if we don't see faster growth and more efforts towards addressing inequalities, we're unlikely to achieve those goals, and in particularly we highlight the least developed countries where our on the current trajectory, we could still see 35% of the population in high levels of poverty. So that is a concern. What about hopes? One of the more positive messages that's coming out of the report is in relation to some of the environmental dimensions of sustainable development. We've now seen 3 consecutive years where the level of global carbon emissions has remained stable, despite the fact that the world economy has been growing. I should stress that we're still a long way from achieving the very ambitious targets that we have on the environmental, but this is still a positive step. And if we can continue to maintain the strong global commitments, further emphasis to both from the public and private sector towards improving energy efficiency, towards expanding renewable energy use, then we can continue to make progress on these dimensions over the coming years.
When you and your team prepare the report, how do you hope that it will help governments around the globe, and also in some ways also ordinary people?
So our main purpose of the report is we hope that to inform our readers of the major macroeconomic developments and prospects in different regions around the world, but through this lens of the social and environmental dimensions of sustainable development as well. We hope to raise awareness of some of the risks that the global economy faces on these dimensions, and also hope to equip the policymakers with some broad guidelines of in order to help design policies to address some of the difficulties that they may face towards achieving sustainable development going forward.
Thank you so much, Dawn, and thank you for watching us. And if you have questions after this broadcast, please share them in the comments field below the broadcast, and we will try to respond to as many as we can. We will also share a link to the latest report, the mid-year update of the World Economic Situation and Prospects that was released this week. So there will be a link there on this page as well, so you can access the report and learn more about the findings, the latest findings, and also some of the recommendations that are being presented to help spur the economy. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.